While the Kennedy Center removes Trump from its facade, Trump is trying to erase something else, his impeachment record. The Wall Street Journal reports, according to people familiar with the matter, that the president and his allies are now working on a plan to erase his 2 impeachments from history, moving to expunge them from the record altogether. Trump told the Journal over the phone this week, quote, "It should be done because I did nothing wrong. It was a rigged deal. It was a whole rigged situation." James Sample is back with us. And I'm not even really sure I need to ask you a question because this sounds sort of familiar.
What does that mean?
Rigged situation over here, over there. Everything is rigged.
There is no mechanism to unring an impeachment, just as you cannot unring a bell. In that particular Wall Street Journal piece, my friend, professor at University of North Carolina School of Law, Mike Gerhardt, called it absurd. And I think that's actually generous. That's a euphemism for what this is. It's a thing that happened in history. And
maybe he could also undo January 6th while he's at it if he's going to undo his impeachment.
Hey everyone, welcome. Dr. John Podcast is here. Trump is attempting something never attempted in U.S. history, systematically dismantling the foundations of presidential accountability in real time. Once you understand what he's actually doing, it's clear we've entered completely uncharted constitutional territory. Let me paint you a picture of the sheer insanity of what's unfolding right now. Trump has been impeached twice, not once, twice. He is the only president in the entire 200-plus year history of the United States to hold that dubious distinction. The first time was over Ukraine, when he got caught pressuring a foreign leader to dig up dirt on his political rival while withholding nearly $400 million in military aid that Congress had already approved. The second time was over the January 6th attack on the Capitol, when he was charged with incitement of insurrection in the most bipartisan impeachment vote in American history, with 10 Republicans crossing the aisle to vote against their own party's president. Those are facts. They happened.
Right. Well, and there he's had some success in erasing, conviction.
Rewriting the narrative.
Rewriting the narrative, rewriting. So it's all part and parcel. And look, it is actually consistent with the report you just came off of from Kevin Fry there, right? In a sense, just looking at that tarp, right? The tarp is opaque. You know what's interesting about that opaque tarp is it is so transparently there to hide what's really happening so that we don't get that visual of the actual letters being physically removed.
Yeah, because he definitely didn't have a problem when the letters were going up, and he doesn't have a problem when the name is going up somewhere, but he certainly has a problem when the name is being taken down. But on the impeachment issue for a second, I wonder how much of this is, again, Donald Trump not just trying to recast and rewrite history in the narrative, but prepare for something in the future. And I think the one outstanding question that I wonder if, folks like you are even contemplating as to whether or not Donald Trump tries to pardon himself before he leaves office, right? And I think, there's no doubt he's going to do it to his family, I suspect.
They are documented in the congressional record. They are taught in history classes. They are part of the permanent historical record of the Trump presidency. And now, according to reporting from major news outlets confirmed in 2026, Trump and his allies are working on a plan to have Congress pass a resolution that would formally expunge both of his impeachments from the record as if they never happened. They want to declare them void, null, erased, gone, as if the votes never took place, as if the charges never existed, as if the entire thing was just a bad dream that everyone collectively agreed to forget. And here's the thing that makes this even more unbelievably wild. This is happening at the exact same moment that Democrats are introducing new articles of impeachment over Trump's conduct regarding Iran. Because on a day in early 2026,
when you see this IRS deal that he cut where he is trying to kind of immunize himself from being audited in the future, his family, his businesses, why not take it a step further and try to pardon himself and his family?
I'd be surprised if he doesn't try that, but I think that you're absolutely spot on in pointing to the IRS immunity deal. I think I understand, and I don't think it's a mistake by any stretch, why so much attention has been paid to the slush fund, right, to the anti-weaponization fund. Let's be clear. The real prize from his perspective was that audit immunity deal, and it is, at least on a relative level, flying under the radar. If you could give yourself something that no one has ever had, right? Literally unprecedented, and it was worth $100 million, and you could give it to yourself as settlement for a case that is not actually an adversarial case, and which Judge Kathleen Williams, briefs were submitted as recently as last night in Florida, is considering the question of whether or not there was even a case to settle.
Trump posted on his social media platform that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. He was talking about Iran and its 90 million people. He was threatening to wipe out an entire civilization with American military power in a social media post that went out to millions of followers, while American jets were actively flying missions over Iranian territory. And Democrats absolutely lost their minds. They called it unhinged. They called it an impeachable offense. They introduced actual articles of impeachment within 24 hours. Others called for Trump's removal under the 25th Amendment, which allows the vice president and cabinet to declare the president unfit. So you have this absolutely surreal situation where Trump is facing calls for his third impeachment over Iran, while simultaneously trying to erase his first two impeachments from the history books.
That would be a pretty significant gift. We don't have precedent on point as to whether self-pardons are a legitimate mechanism. I suspect the Supreme Court would say it's a political question and they wouldn't touch it.
Well, and why would he even need a self-pardon if he has presidential immunity? Would he need it?
He has changed the law in numerous ways, including in 2024 in Trump v. United States, when the Supreme Court gave the president an immunity that was never before recognized. You're absolutely right, Elise.
So as we, this whole weekend sort of kicks off the America 250 theme and the celebrations leading up to July 4th, the nation's birthday. You're a constitutional law expert. What do you think our founders would think, if they were to be dropped down and be able to visit Washington, D.C. and get caught up in what's been going on in the country right now on its 250th birthday? What do you imagine would be going through their minds?
Well, the founders were flawed. Sometimes I think we make the mistake of romanticizing them as perfect people. They were flawed just as we all are. But I think that
you genuinely cannot make this up. It's too absurd. It's too audacious. It's too completely off the rails to be fiction. So let's go back to the beginning and walk through all of this piece by piece, because to understand the full weight of what Trump is trying to erase, you need to understand exactly what happened in both impeachments and why they matter so much. Impeachment number 1 happened in December 2019, and it all started with a phone call the previous July. Trump called Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and asked him to announce investigations into two things. First, a theory that it was Ukraine, not Russia, that interfered in the 2016 election. Second, an investigation into Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, who was at that point emerging as Trump's main political rival for the 2020 election.
My assessment of where we are at age 250 is that there are real reasons for concern, but that the situation is not hopeless. And the examples that I would point to for hope are the kinds of things we've seen even in just the last year and a half. The people freezing in the cold in Minnesota who didn't complain for an instant about being out there. That's the kind of America that we can be. And I think that's the kind of America that, frankly, we need to be if we're going to make it another 250. I think they would be concerned about the devolution of separation of powers. I think they would be stunned at the power of the president and the impotence of Congress, whether by choice or by force.
So Trump has continued his trend of appointing personal lawyers into plum positions within his government. James McDonald has been selected to lead the New York Federal Prosecutor's Office. What do you make of that appointment?
Well, I think the president has the right to appoint or to nominate.
Now, here's the part that turned this from a political controversy into an impeachment. At the exact same time that call happened, the Trump administration had secretly frozen nearly $400 million in military aid that Congress had already approved for Ukraine. The implication, and what the House investigation concluded, was that Trump was using that aid as leverage. Do the investigations I want, or the money doesn't flow. An intelligence community whistleblower reported the call. A transcript was eventually released. Career diplomats and national security officials testified under oath. The House impeached Trump on 2 articles, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The Senate acquitted him, but the vote, the charges, the testimony, all of it is permanent. All of it is in the record. Impeachment number 2 happened in January 2021, just 1 week after the Capitol attack. This one is even harder to forget because everyone watched it happen in real time. On January 6th, a mob of Trump supporters, fueled by months of Trump publicly insisting the election had been stolen, stormed the United States Capitol while Congress was in the process of certifying Joe Biden's electoral victory. 5 people died. Lawmakers were evacuated. The certification was delayed for hours, and the question the House put before itself was, did Trump incite this? Did his words, his rallies, his months of rhetoric about a stolen election, his speech that morning, his instructions to march on the Capitol, did all of that amount to incitement of insurrection? The House said yes by a vote of 232 to 197, with 10 Republicans voting yes. That is the most Republicans who have ever voted to impeach a president from their own party in American history. The Senate trial resulted in 57 votes to convict, a majority, but not the 2/3 needed for removal. Acquitted again. But the record stands. The charges stand. The 10 Republican votes stand. Those are historical facts that no resolution can touch. And yet here we are. Trump and his team are pushing lawmakers to pass a resolution that would declare both impeachments expunged, as if the articles of impeachment had never passed the full House. A White House spokesperson called it sane individuals recognizing these sham efforts and wanting to undo those shameful actions. Speaker Mike Johnson confirmed he has spoken with Trump and legal experts about clearing it. A resolution already exists with more than 20 co-sponsors and the backing of Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan. The plan, according to the reporting, is to push this through before November, before Republicans are widely expected to lose their House majority in the midterms. And if they do lose the majority before the vote happens, to push it through in the lame duck session, when outgoing members who will never face voters again can cast one final vote to declare Trump's impeachments illegitimate. Now here's the critical thing you need to understand about this plan. It has no legal effect. Zero, none. Constitutional scholars, legal experts, and even the House's own parliamentarian have been clear about this. The Constitution does not provide any mechanism to reverse an impeachment. Once the House votes to impeach, that vote happened. It is in the congressional record. It is a historical fact. A resolution passed by a later Congress saying it should not have happened does not change what actually happened any more than me writing a note saying I never lost an argument changes the fact that I lost it. Georgetown University law professor Michael Gerhardt called the whole idea absurd. Jonathan Turley, someone Republicans actually like and often cite, said it is not like a constitutional do-over and that once you are impeached, you are impeached. Even the House Parliamentarian's office said the resolution carries no explicit consequence and that the original votes remain in the congressional record. So why do it if it has no legal weight? Why push for it? And the answer is purely political and actually pretty smart as a political move, even if it's constitutionally meaningless, because the goal is not legal. The goal is to put every single House Republican on record on the official congressional record saying that Trump's impeachments were illegitimate, so that from this point forward, every time anyone brings up the impeachments, Trump can point to that resolution and say even Congress said those were sham proceedings. Even the House voted to say they should never have happened. And then when Democrats try to pursue a third impeachment over Iran or anything else, Trump can frame it as just another round of the same partisan witch hunt that his own Congress officially declared illegitimate. It's not about erasing the past. It's about poisoning the future narrative on accountability. And speaking of the future, let's talk about the Iran situation because this is where things get genuinely alarming. On a day in early 2026, Trump posted on Truth Social while his self-imposed deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz was expiring. And what he posted was this: a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. He was talking about Iran and its 90 million people. He followed it up by saying he did not want that to happen, but it probably will. And then while people were still processing the fact that the President of the United States just threatened the extinction of a civilization on social media, he announced a 2-week ceasefire deal. So within hours, it went from a whole civilization will die tonight to we got a deal. That whiplash alone should have set off every alarm in Washington. But instead, what happened was predictable. unfixable. Democrats called for his removal. Republicans went mostly quiet. And the whole thing got absorbed into the news cycle within 48 hours. Dozens of House Democrats introduced articles of impeachment. Representative John Larson introduced articles citing Trump's serial usurpation of the congressional war power and commission of murder, war crimes, and piracy. Representative Seth Moulton said directly, "Temporary ceasefire or not, Trump already committed an impeachable offense. Congress needs to get back to work and remove him from office." Representative Ilhan Omar asked her Republican colleagues when it would be enough for them to grow spines and remove him from office. And then there was the 25th Amendment push, calling for Vice President Vance and the cabinet to declare Trump unfit and remove him that way. None of it went anywhere. Republicans control both chambers. The votes are not there, but the calls are real. The articles exist, and they sit on top of two existing impeachments that Trump is now trying to retroactively declare never happened. Now here's the part that doesn't get enough attention in the mainstream coverage. Democrats do not actually have the votes to impeach Trump right now. Republicans control both the House and the Senate. Any impeachment resolution introduced by Democrats goes nowhere. It gets referred to committee and dies. The Republicans who control the committee schedule will never bring it to a floor vote. So the new articles of impeachment over Iran, as serious as the underlying conduct is, are essentially symbolic right now. They are a statement, a protest, a marker in the record that says some members of Congress believe this crossed the line. But they are not going anywhere, and Trump knows that. And that knowledge that he is functionally immune from removal as long as his party controls Congress is part of what makes the expungement push feel so calculated and so deliberate. He is not expunging the old impeachments because he is afraid of the new ones. He is expunging them to reshape the story before the midterms change the balance of power. So that if Democrats win Congress in November, and polling suggests they might, and if they then try to use their new majority to investigate or impeach over Iran or anything else, Trump can point to the expungement vote and say Congress officially agreed the previous ones were a sham and therefore this one is too. It is prepositioning. It is narrative infrastructure. It is building the counter-argument before the argument even arrives. So here is what you actually have right now. A president who has been impeached twice for Ukraine pressure and incitement of insurrection, who is now facing fresh impeachment calls over Iran war powers, who is simultaneously pushing Congress to pass a resolution declaring the first two impeachments don't count, and whose team is planning to time that vote for the lame duck session when outgoing members face no consequences for putting their names on it. That is the full picture, and it is extraordinary. Let me bring this home with the core takeaways, because there's a lot going on here, and I want to make sure you understand exactly what this means and why it matters. First, expungement is legally meaningless but politically powerful, and that gap between legal reality and political perception is exactly what Trump is exploiting. No law professor, no constitutional scholar, no congressional parliamentarian believes this resolution changes anything about the legal or historical record. The impeachments happened. They are documented. They are in the history books. A resolution passed by a Republican Congress saying they should not have happened does not alter the transcript of the Ukraine call. It does not change the footage of January 6th. It does not erase the testimony of career diplomats who went under oath to describe what Trump asked Zelensky to do. None of that goes away. But politically, for the 40 to 45% of the country that gets its news primarily from Trump-aligned media, this resolution will become the official answer every time someone brings up impeachments. It becomes a counter-narrative. And in American politics right now, counter-narratives are worth more than facts to the people who believe them. Second, the timing of this plan tells you everything. They are not trying to pass this now while Republicans still technically control the House. They are waiting until after the midterms, after an election where Republicans are widely expected to lose their majority to push it through in the lame duck session. Think about what that means. They are going to have outgoing members, people who just lost their seats, people who will never run for office again, people who face zero consequences from their constituents for this vote, cast a vote to officially declare Trump's impeachments illegitimate. That is not conviction. That is not principle. That is a parting gift to a president from politicians who have nothing left to lose by giving it. And it is being planned that way deliberately. Because if Republicans actually believe this resolution had broad public support, if they thought it was a political winner, they would be racing to pass it right now while they still have the majority. The fact that they are waiting for the lame duck is proof that even they know this is not something they want to defend to voters. Third, this is part of a much bigger pattern of avoiding accountability. Every time Trump has faced a formal mechanism of accountability, the first impeachment, the second impeachment, the Georgia grand jury, the federal indictments, the response has not been to engage with the substance of the charges. The response has been to attack the process, to call it a witch hunt, to delay, appeal, pressure, and ultimately try to render the mechanism itself illegitimate. That is a consistent, documented, years-long pattern. And the expungement play is just the most brazen and constitutionally audacious version of that same strategy. It is not arguing that Trump did not do what he was charged with. Nobody in the expungement resolution is saying the Ukraine call did not happen. Nobody is saying January 6th did not happen. What they are saying is that the process that responded to those events was itself illegitimate, and that Congress should vote to officially stamp that claim into the record. So it is not a factual defense. It is a procedural attack. And procedural attacks are actually very effective in American politics because most people do not have the time or the background to evaluate whether a process was legitimate. They just hear Congress said it was a sham, and they move on. And if that works even partially, even just in the political narrative, then the next time any accountability mechanism targets Trump, he can point to the expungement and say, see, this is what they always do. And Congress itself agreed with me. It is a blueprint for making any future accountability impossible to land with the public. Fourth, the Iran situation shows why all of this matters right now, not just as political history, but as a live, ongoing issue with real consequences. A sitting president posted on social media that a whole civilization will die tonight and then spent the next few hours holding the threat over 90 million Iranian people as leverage in a military standoff. Democratic lawmakers introduced articles of impeachment. Constitutional scholars wrote pieces saying the statement crossed lines that have never been crossed by an American president in the history of this country. And the entire episode was essentially absorbed and moved past within a news cycle. Because when accountability mechanisms have been attacked, delegitimized, and run through party line votes enough times, they stop functioning as deterrents. If Trump succeeds in getting Congress to officially declare his past impeachments were shams, then the next Democratic attempt to use impeachment as a check on his power becomes even easier to dismiss. Not because the Constitution changed, but because the political meaning of impeachment has been hollowed out. Here's the bottom line. What Trump is doing right now is not just unusual, it is genuinely unprecedented in American history. No president has ever successfully had their impeachment expunged. No Congress has ever voted to retroactively declare a prior Congress's impeachment illegitimate. The Constitution does not allow it in any meaningful legal sense. Constitutional scholars across the political spectrum, including people who are generally sympathetic to Republican arguments, say this resolution would carry minimal to zero legal weight. And yet the plan is moving forward with Speaker Johnson on board, with over 20 co-sponsors, with a specific timing strategy built around lame duck members who would never face voters again. And simultaneously, while all of this is happening, there are fresh articles of impeachment sitting in the House over a war that started without congressional authorization and a social media post threatening the extinction of an entire civilization. The accountability mechanisms are under attack from every direction at once. The past ones are being retroactively declared illegitimate. The future ones are being preemptively discredited before they can even get a vote. And the question that all of this raises, the one that should keep every American up at night, regardless of party, is this. What happens to a democracy when the formal tools of accountability stop working? When impeachment becomes just another word that gets expunged? When a post saying a whole civilization will die tonight gets absorbed by the news cycle before lunch? What comes after accountability breaks down? Because that is the real story here. Not just the resolution, not just the Iran post, but what it means that we are even having this conversation in the first place. The fact that this is even being attempted tells you that the guardrails of American democracy are being tested in ways they have never been tested before. And the outcome of this test will determine what kind of country we become. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over, and the next chapter is going to be even more critical.